Hello, people. I am back again. This is Kathy, and the last two videos I just basically shared with you about becoming a pastor's wife and all of the hiccups and the shocking, the overwhelming parts of initially becoming that person, transforming into that person, what I was supposed to do, just being confused and overwhelmed, and how I began to uh, figure out some things, and how I began to go to my husband, which is my pastor, and ask him, what is it that you would like for me to do? So as I began to do all of those things, some things were revealed at first, some things were not. Some things I had to pray about, some things I had to figure out on my own. And he basically just said, be yourself. um, Even with being myself, I didn't know what my role was. I would ask, and some things I would uh, get corrected for, and I didn't understand that because I was still thinking that I was the wife, not a member. I thought that I was above membership. Actually, I thought that I was in a higher role than just being a member, and that's where God had to humble me, and I got corrected like everyone else, and so I had to deal with that in my mind. And so God began to deal with me about those things, and I still didn't know where my place was initially. I knew that the people was accepting me, and I felt good about that because that was my initial concern, whether or not I would be accepted as a first lady, what was my role. And when we first started, there were women coming in. They would stay for a little while, in and out. But we mainly started our foundation from a lot of men or brothers in the church. So at some points, it was just me, and I was the only lady there. Um, the brothers in the church would be there, supporting my husband, and I'm still looking on like, well, there are no women in the church for me to be a part of, for me to gather, so for me um, to spearhead a women's group. Um, I still felt like there was nothing to do. So I just began to rest in the Lord, and be still, um, and just still know that He was God, and that it was going to come to me eventually. I was going to find out and learn my role eventually. So as I was still in the Lord, I just sat there. I was there on the front row listening to all of my husband's sermons, and I just began to be very observant, very observant. Um, and I began to notice things that needed to be done. I noticed that he needed um, to make sure that he had a towel for his face to wipe the sweat off. He needed um, to have water in place. He needed something as simple as a mint after church. He needed um, the anointing oil to be in his reach when he got ready to pray for people. So there were a lot of things that he needed. He did not have an armor bearer. So I became all of those things. I became a servant in the Lord. I began to serve. He needed people to greet visitors that came into the church. I became the greeter, on the I guess what you would say hospitality committee. I began to serve the people, and that's how I began my role in the church, doing what was needed. Um, I began to notice that um, the envelopes needed to be passed out. I couldn't get up for everything, so I made sure that my girls distributed the envelopes, and we made sure that we had someone in place to take up the offering. So as we began, like I said, it was a small group, and we had to utilize what we had. We had what we had, and nothing else, no one else. So we utilized what we had, and so my role, as I see it now, was to just be an observer and a servant in the church. And so I served. I served my husband. I served my pastor, and that began to become a big help. And he would call my name at the end, and tell me what he needed me to do, even if it was in doing altar call. He would just say, Cat, get the oil, you know. So sometimes he didn't have to call me First Lady, get oil, Sister Nobles, get oil. He just said, Cat, get oil. And so I would get up and do that. Whatever he needed of me, I just needed to be present, and I needed to be there for him whenever he needed something. So that became my role, and I understood that the things that needed to be done, I understood that if we had dinner after service with just a few people that we had, then I made sure that I organized that, and made sure the people brought what needed to be brought. So just being still, sometimes that will help you hear what God has to say. It will help you understand some things. Just being observant, just watch, look, learn, see what and hear, see what needs to be done, and then begin to do that, and that will be your role. So I would say to all of the pastors' wives, if you don't know your role when you're initially starting out, just be still, be in the presence of God, pray, ask questions. And sometimes your husband may not even, because I know a few times I may have gotten on his nerves, and I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, I don't know, just see what needs to be done. There are a lot of things that we need to do. We don't have a lot of members. Whatever you see needs to be done, just do it. And that's what he would say. And I knew that if his frustration was kicking in, but that's what I began to do. I began to observe. I began to just be plug myself in wherever I needed to be plugged in at, wherever there was a void, a hole, then I began to do that. And so everything except for the sound system, I didn't know what I was doing on the sound system, but he plugged my daughters in for that. So whatever I couldn't do, my daughters did. My daughters started working on the sound system. So it's, if you have children, women of God, and you are starting a church, and the pastor, your husband, is feeling overwhelmed, you plug those children in wherever they need to be. Whatever they can do, you plug them in, and you teach them how to work in the church, how to work in the ministry. Teach your kids what to do. They can do be on a praise team. They can do offering. They can do praise dances. They can work the sound system. They can actually greet people as they come in. Teach them how to be attendants or ushers, so they can be on a hospitality committee. So whatever you need to happen, don't try to do it yourself as a pastor's wife. Make sure that you get help as well. Make sure you start to appoint people in different areas in the church. When women started coming in, I started appointing as well. So some things you will figure out on your own. Some things you will have to pray about. Some things you will have to ask questions, and ask the pastor what is it that he would like to take place. And don't do a lot of things without consulting him, because remember, he is the pastor. So that's what I started learning for myself. I just had to learn it, and I had to do it. I had to humble myself, make sure everything was running smoothly for my husband, because you are there for a help meet. You are there for to support the pastor, your husband, and just making sure that you are that support that he needs. You need to be that number one supporter. You don't want anyone else coming in being that supporter unless they're sent by God. So just make sure that you are doing all the things that you need to do. And that will be a great lesson to you as far as learning what your role is. And you will be successful. You'll find yourself being very successful. Just be humble, submit yourself. Don't be too boastful or too high, on a high level, too high minded to think that you can't be told what to do, because your husband, as the pastor, he needs your help, he needs your support, and that is not the time to take the wife role. That's the time to take the role, the wife role, as far as being the pastor's wife in the church as a member. That's not the time to take the homebody wife role where you think that you're not supposed to be working in the church. Wives should be doing something in the church if the pastor does not have anyone to help. Now, if you have a lot of members, okay, great, that's fine. You can appoint and anoint all you want to and let them do it. But if there's no help, then you are the help. You are the help. And that's one thing that I had to understand, and I had to go forth and do. So just remember that you are the help for your husband, for the pastor. You are his number one supporter. You should be praying for him and supporting him however he needs, and you don't need to let him feel in any way that you don't trust him, because at first I did question a lot of things, and that made him feel as if I didn't trust him as being a pastor, and so I had to go back and step back and ask for forgiveness of that, and just let him know that he has your support, that you do trust him, and give it to God. Whatever things that you have a question about, you just pray about it and you ask God to show you, to lead you, because you all should be on one accord. And so just make sure you include prayer in there, and and just make sure that you humble yourself as a member, as a wife. Submit yourself to your spouse, and just pray about it. The things that you don't understand, you'll know whether you should be going to your husband asking the question, or should you just be going to God and praying about it. Some things don't even bother your husband with. Just pray about it. Just pray about it, because sometimes they're overwhelmed and they can't take all of that stuff, and it's good to just be able to go to the Lord. So make sure you have your prayer life in order, and that is definitely another segment that we will do, talking about prayer. So I just wanted to chime in and let you know about just going before God, praying about it, submitting yourself, humbling yourself, and making sure that your steps are ordered by the Lord. And so and that is all for this segment. So you have a blessed day, and I will talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.